Hi and welcome to Matasync's Skill of the Week. This week we will be going over how to use the Form tool in Matasync. The Form tool is going to allow you to effortlessly create forms, customize them in ways that were impossible with the paper system, and get rid of that paper system altogether, save a few trees. So, to do this, we are going to head over to our organization portal and head to the Forms tool. Once there, to create a form, we simply click Create Form to be taken to the form builder. You'll be taken to this page with these three tabs and a form name and form description to be filled out. We'll go over the tabs later, but for now, pick a name and describe what the purpose of this form is, and make sure they're both accurate to the actual purpose and design of this form. Once these two things are filled out, we create pages. We can have as many pages as we need, and we can have whatever we need on that pages. We have two options. We have the ability to add text and add questions. Add text is simply via the text editor that we have been using all throughout Matasync. And we'll have the ability to insert images and videos into this text editor. A great tool if this form is for elections, and a great tool in general for any form of form. And then we have the ability to, of course, add questions. And our question options are very vast, so we are going to go over all of them together. The questions are segmented into categories based on how they are answered. Basic input is when the answerer is going to input the answer. Multiple choice is when individuals are going to pick from the answers you select. And date/time is individuals are going to input date, time, or time, but it's going to be in a standardized way, meaning that individuals can only input it in the way that Matasync determines it, and that way everyone's answer to these will match. Then we have additional, which is sort of the miscellaneous option, and we'll start here. Payment, of course, means you're going to add payments. A question to handle payments if that's part of the form. Terms and conditions are going to refer to when you have a large bulky text or perhaps a link, and the individual is going to read those and then click a box to determine that they read it and agree to it. Upload, of course, means they're going to upload some sort of file, maybe a picture, that sort of thing. I skipped reviewer because it's going to take a little bit of explaining. So reviewers in Matasync's form builder can be input in two ways. Here, via a question that you put in, or up here via the reviewers tab. Reviewers are individuals that are selected either by the individual filling out the form, which would refer to the question down here, or put into the form through the form creator, which would be me, and if I wanted to do that, I would use the tab up here. Reviewers are individuals that are selected to come into a form submission, read through it, and basically determine what they think the action should be taken. Do they think it's fine and should be approved, or do they think it needs work and needs to be reopened to the individual who submitted the form? That's the difference. The other difference is that the reviewer down here selected by the filler out of the form is going to only have access to the submission that person who selected them did. So if I was filling out this form and I selected a reviewer, they would only have access to my submission. If I, however, as the creator of the form, put that same reviewer into this tab, then they would have access to all submissions that relate to this form. And again, they do not approve or deny a form, they simply give their opinion on the form as it was submitted. Alright, now let's go over the rest of the questions. For basic inputs, we have single line, in which they input a single line, multi-line, which they can answer in a larger amount, number, where they input numbers, phone number, when they input an answer that matches the phone number format, email address, where their answer meets the email format, website, where their answer fits the URL format, and contact information, where you're asking for phone number and email together. Let's click a single line text to go over how this works. What you'll find is that the first 5 options are going to be the same for all of the questions. So question text, you're simply going to put in what you're asking. What is your favorite drink? What is your favorite food? Who would you like to be president? That sort of thing. Require answer means that a person cannot move on to a second question or a second page until they've answered this question. Admin use only. So admin use only is something that you might want to consider as an admin, in which case you might want to put in a question that as an admin you would answer and the individual who is filling out this form would not see, would not have any access to. So let's say you have a form, you're creating a form that is called a missed shift form. Let's say an individual missed a meeting, and a miss of a meeting requires the filling out of this form to assess why they missed the meeting. Well, let's say this question is, what is the reason, what are the circumstances that resulted in you missing the meeting? And then after that, we're going to add another question, and it's going to be admin use only that says, do you believe this answer? And that admin is going to answer if they believe it or not. And it's up to you how it gets handled, of course, but that is simply my example. So think about whether you want admin use only questions, think about which ones should be admin use only questions, it's up to you. Disable question, that basically refers to when you have a form and have been using it for an extended period of time, there's a chance that as time moves on, a question might no longer reflect what you want to assess with that form. So you may disable this question so you don't lose that question in case you want to reinstate it later, but it's no longer going to appear in a form submission while a person is filling out the form. Instructions, if we click that, we get an additional word box and we can basically put in additional information if it's necessary involving this question. Initial value is great specifically for these fill-in questions. Basically, you're going to give an example of some kind. So let's say our question is, what's your favorite food? And we're going to do example, pizza. And there you go. Just gives them a sort of example to follow in terms of how they're answering. And then validation. Validation is basically going to be you're restricting how they answer. So if we click that, we'll see this. Allowed input formats. You can see that there are different examples, and you can look through all of those and decide which ones make sense. We have alphabetical, we have alpha lowercase, uppercase, alphanumerical, alphanumerical lowercase, alphanumerical uppercase, and they give you examples to what exactly refers to each one. So if that is how you want to restrict your answer, that works. And then we have minimum length of response. So you have -1. I'm not really sure how a person can delete from a question, but that's pretty funny. 0, so maybe if it's not a required answer, then 0 is a totally fine minimum amount because they don't necessarily have to answer. Let's say your maximum is going to be 10. If you're asking them, let's say, what is your first name? Well, then that's pretty acceptable in terms of how long they should answer. Maybe you're attempting to weed out the individuals and stop them from putting in both their first and last name and get them to reread the question to make sure they're only putting in their first name. That sort of thing. And do not allow spacing and do not allow punctuation. All of that is up to you, of course. And one thing to note is that validation is only going to be present for these fill-in answer types. So that is basic input, and now let's look at a multiple choice. Radio button. As you can see, these are relatively the exact same as they were over in the fill-in answer types. The only difference is now we have a answer choice option because we're putting in answers. So again, let's stick with what's your favorite food. And pizza is an answer, and as you can see, as I put in an answer, the second option opens up, pasta, and the third option opens up, let's say dessert, and a fourth option, so on and so forth. The only answer choices that will appear are the ones that have these blue icons next to them, this one being to move the order of the answer choices, and this one to be delete an answer choice. Initial value for this is a little different. If we click that, we'll have a drop down and we'll be able to pick from the answer choices we input. Keep in mind though that by selecting an answer choice, for instance pasta, that means when an individual reaches this question, pasta will already be selected. So it doesn't work quite as well for these multiple choice type questions, but for the fill-ins they work great. Now let's head over to date and time, and as you can see, it is the same thing. The validations have already been set so that individuals will only answer in a specific standardized date and time sort of way. And then these, as I said, are exactly what they sound like. And you can fill in the information, for instance, terms and condition. Maybe you're inputting a URL. Maybe you're putting in a paragraph of what they can agree to. Customize the text to display next to checkbox. So this would be the I have read and I agree sort of thing. And here are the same answers. I'm not really sure why pasta stayed, but I'll get rid of that. There we go. And those are all of the question types that are in this form builder. So it's great. It gives you a lot of options. You'll be able to really customize it. The one thing I do want to show you, however, so I'm going to get rid of this text box, is let's create a quick question. Let's go to single line text. Let's say, what is your favorite food? And let's say the answer is required. We don't need additional instructions. We're not going to fill in anything else. They're just going to say pizza or something like that. We click done. And when we click done, the question appears. As you can see, it is a simple question with a little box to put in our single line response. Now the cool thing about Matisync is that when we create a second page, a new option up here opens, and it's called Logic. You can see the different ones that appeared on the first page, collapse, move, and delete, which are all fairly self-explanatory, but Logic is really cool. Logic will allow you to create branching paths from previously created questions. Not the text boxes, but the questions. So if I click Logic, we can select a question, and we can say, what is your favorite food? Alright? We can also say add and statement or add or statement. What this means is if we click add and we had, let's say, 5 questions, we can select another question and we can say that when it comes to the answering what is your food and this one, and of course or refers to what is your favorite food or this one, so on and so forth. So you can create a really complex branching path, or in this case we can go over a more simple one, which is if their answer is present, which means they answered it, blank, which means they didn't, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, is not equal to, is within range, is outside of range, has one of the values, does not have one of the values. So you can see this sort of idea behind these. Let's give you an example though. Is equal to, and what is it going to be equal to? We're going to say pizza. If they answer this question and it is pizza, click done, and then basically this page is going to pop up if they answered pizza to this question. If they answered pasta or let's say burgers to this question, this page will not even appear. And then we can add a question, we can make it a single line, and we can just say, what is your favorite pizza topping? And that is the idea there. And that is essentially the form builder in terms of actually building the form. Now let's go over these tabs. We have settings, general settings. Again, here is the visibility settings. We can make it public. We can allow everyone at CSUN to see it. Everyone in Matisync HQ, the organization portal we are in right now. Or we can select groups who can see it. Maybe we only want to create this form for admin use only. Form category, you can add categories to your form builder. We can go over that in a future Matisync Skill of the Week video. And then submission limits, we can limit how many people are allowed to submit, and we can limit the time period. Require payments, again, that refers to the payment question that we might have inputted into the form builder. That's general settings. Then we have notified admins. We can select of our organization portal's admins who will be a notified admin upon submission. So let's say I click myself. What that means is that every time someone submits a form, or every time someone submits this form, I will get a notification that a submission for this form has been done. Scoring, you can create groups from the groups you created in your Peoples tool to score the form. So if I want administrators as my scoring group, then all of the people in the administrator group will have access to enter the form submissions for this form and give it scores. It's a numerical score from 1 to 10, and then the administrator in charge of approving or denying a form can look at those scores and determine if the scoring group thinks it a strong form. Submission. Then with custom messages, we can give custom messages for people who submit, and then for those submissions we can give custom messages for the approval, denial, or reopening of the form. And that is the idea behind the settings. So those are all the settings options. Reviewers, we cannot add reviewers until we save it. And of course, once we save it, we can add the reviewers as we discussed earlier. Clicking publish will publish the form, which means that it will be accessible to the individuals in your organization portal for completion and submission. And that is the form tool. The two things, however, we should cover before ending is the actual forms dashboard. So as you can see, here is an existing form right now, and if we click on this form, we are taken to that form's specific form dashboard. We can delete the form, duplicate it, edit it, and then we can export the answers. You won't see in Data Browser, but you can export it, which means that you can see all of the submissions as a PDF or as the XLSX file. In addition, a great tool is that all the questions that you put into a form will be present in this drop-down menu. If you choose, let's say, contact person's first name, it will then show you every person who submitted a form, how they answered that question. So you'll have a list of the answers to that specific question. So if you're doing elections and you just want to see what the votes came in for the president, you would select, let's say this one says, who do you want to be for president? Or who do you want to be president? And then all the answers would appear down here. The results tab gives you an awesome sort of statistical analysis of how people answered certain questions, specifically the multiple choice questions. Those are the only ones that will have these statistical sort of percentages and the count and all of that. You can also select all or approved only. And then actions, you can publish a message to all of the people who are approved, deferred, or denied. And then you'd click create message and you'd be able to create that message. Update user accounts. You can update accounts based on the submissions. The approved submissions become administrators, deferred become administrators. You can do a whole bunch of cool, awesome things. You can make basically any form that has been approved, denied or deferred, move those individuals into a Metasync group that you've created. And then you can contact and send messages to individuals who have not completed your form. So it's a great tool, awesome, inventive, and really customizable. The one other thing I wanted to bring to your guys' attention is that if you go to events, you will see event forms. This is the same thing as the forms tool. However, there's a split between your forms for your organization and the specific forms you create for events. So that's something to keep in mind, that the event forms, any form need to be created in the events tool. This tab right here, you need to click that and then you'll be able to create another form just for events. Not in the forms tool, in the events tool with this tab you create your event forms. And that is something definitely to keep in mind. But that has been this week's Skill of the Week. I hope you all have a great week and I will see you at the next Skill of the Week. Have a good one. Bye-bye.